darkness is not an affirmative force. It simply reoccupies the space vacated by the light.
This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio
and Urban Family Talk.
It should be uncomfortable for a believer to live as a hypocrite.
Delivering people out of the bondage of mainstream media
and the philosophies of this world.
God has called you and me to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment. Let's not miss our moment.
And now, the Hamilton Corner.
Welcome to this Friday edition of the Hamilton Corner. I'm your guest host, Walker Wildmon. And if you haven't liked me guest hosting for you in the past few days, well, first off, don't tell me that because it'll hurt my feelings. But second off, the good news is that I believe the great Abe Hamilton will be back in studio next week. So good news there. Abe will be back on the show next week in the host chair for the Hamilton Corner. You can hear the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Both of those networks, American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk, you can hear the show there. A couple ways before we get into the show content, a couple ways to keep up with the show. First off, you can always visit our website, afr.net, or urbanfamilytalk.com. You can catch the podcast there at afr.net. Another way to keep up with the show is you can watch on YouTube or you can watch on Facebook Live. Both ways you can watch the show. Go to YouTube or Facebook and just type in the Hamilton Corner and subscribe to the show page, and you'll get all the content, news stories, and video from each day's program. But one of the things that we've been doing here at American Family Radio this week is we've been partnering with a ministry called Revival Fires Ministry. And Revival Fires, led by a man by the name of Tim Todd, we are partnering with Revival Fires Ministry for something called Truth for Youth Bibles. And these Truth for Youth Bibles we are offering for free to students across America who agree to hand out the Bibles to friends and family members who they think do not know Christ. And so I'm going to give you a few some information on how to get your free Bible. But if you'll agree to give it out to a classmate or someone else at your school, another student, then we will send you one free Bible, and also with that Bible will come a #6 wristband, and that wristband is citing the 6th commandment: "Thou shalt not kill." Thou shalt not kill. And that'll be relevant with some of the stories we talk about today. But we need to be teaching our kids and the students in our country the 6th commandment and all the commandments, because we have these school shootings where these teenagers go in and slaughter students. Our students need to be taught the 6th commandment and other commandments. Thou shalt not kill. And so you'll get the Truth for Youth Bible, and you'll get the #6 wristband. Looks great, and you can witness with it. If someone asks, what's that wristband about? So here's how you can do that. Here's how you can get your free Bible and wristband, as long as you agree to give it out to a student at your local school, or a classmate, or one of your friends who you think does not know Christ. Visit the website afr.net. If you'll visit our website, afr.net, right on the front page there's a big banner that says Truth for Youth Bible Campaign. Click on it. It'll take you to the page where you can fill out your information and get your Truth for Youth Bible. Moving on into God's Word today, I want to read from Psalm 119. Psalm 119 is one of the most impactful books of the Bible, in my opinion, for me at least. And I'm going to read the first 8 verses here from Psalm 119. Starting off here in verse 1, "Blessed are those whose way is blameless, who walk in the law of the Lord. Blessed are those who keep his testimonies, who seek him with their whole heart, who also do no wrong, but walk in his ways. You have commanded your precepts to be kept diligently. Oh, that my ways may be steadfast in keeping your statutes. then I shall not be put to shame, having fixed my eyes on all your commandments. I will praise you with an upright heart. When I learn your righteous rules, I will keep your statutes. Do not utterly forsake me. So there David is talking about your statutes. He's talking about the Ten Commandments and God's other standards and laws. And so relating to that is the Truth for Youth Bible Campaign. We need to get God's Word, God's standards, God's guide for life into the hands of students across the country. And one way you can do that is through the Truth for Youth Bible Campaign, afr.net on the internet, and you can get your free Truth for Youth Bible. Promise to pass it out to a fellow student or a friend or a family member who does not know Christ, afr.net. But along the same lines of our spiritual well-being, our emotional well-being, I want to read this story to you, and that is, but before I read the story to you and the study that I found, I want to play this clip. And this clip is the former U.S. attorney, U.S. Surgeon General, the former U.S. Surgeon General, which is kind of the doctor of the country, if you will, and it's an executive position in the U.S. that is, I believe he's appointed by the president, and he kind of gives advice and counsel to the executive branch on a lot of medical issues. He's kind of a spokesperson for medical issues in our country. And so this fellow went on Fox News, went on Tucker Carlson's show. His name's Vivek Murthy. He's a former U.S. Surgeon General. And they're talking about loneliness and the cause and effect of loneliness in our country. Let's play clip 1 here.
Well, I don't think there's one single cause, but I think there's one particular cause that's contributing to depression that I don't think we talk about enough, and that is social disconnection, that is loneliness. And when I began my tenure as Surgeon General, if you had told me that I would be thinking about and talking about loneliness as much as I have, I would have told you you're absolutely wrong. But I was really educated by people all across America who I met during my travels while in office. And what I came to see through their stories and examples was that many of them were struggling with isolation and loneliness. They didn't always say that at the beginning of the conversation, but it became very clear that that was a part of their experience and their story, that it was contributing, in fact, to anxiety and to depression in their lives. When I delved more deeply into the science around loneliness, what became very clear is that loneliness is not just a bad feeling that we may have from time to time, but when it's experienced for long periods of time, it can increase our risk for heart disease, for dementia, for anxiety and depression, and it's associated with a shortening of our lifespan. So it turns out that people who are struggling with chronic loneliness not only live shorter lives, but the mortality impact is as great as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Wow. There you have it. The former U.S. Surgeon General in the United States. He says that the loneliness and some of these emotional problems that some Americans are facing is almost as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And you wouldn't think that, but he's right. The research shows that. And one study that I wanted to cite is this. This is out of the Telegraph, but it's citing another study. It says, it leads off by, the headline is, "Too much social media increases loneliness and envy." And the article goes on to say that Facebook and Instagram help us to stay connected with family and friends, but spending too much time on social media could actually make you feel more alone, a new study suggests. The more time a young person spends on social media, the more likely they are to feel socially isolated. And this could relate to adults also, according to psychologists at the University of Pittsburgh. It goes on to say that too much time on sites like Twitter, Snapchat, Reddit, and Tumblr, this is a quote here, may elicit feelings of envy and the distorted belief that others lead happier lives and more successful lives. The study published in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine says. And so that's exactly right. And as I mentioned, this is not just our teenagers and our children. This is adults also. And what happens is, if you notice, nobody posts, by the way, I got off Facebook several years ago. Personally, I got off Facebook several years ago. The only social media account I have is Twitter. It's very simple, 140 characters or less. Not much private information on Facebook, my age, where I'm, my name, where I'm from, but that's it. And so I'm just on, on Twitter. So I'm just on Twitter. I have a Twitter profile. And so I've experienced this firsthand and the effects of social media and whether it's good and bad. And so I'm not demonizing social media, but I'm just citing studies and research just to make us aware, because we do need to have these discussions on not necessarily if we need to be on social media, but if we like social media, how much time should we spend on it and what should we get from it? That's a discussion I think we should have. But moving on here, in order to fix this problem, I think, number one, this is just symptoms and effects of a spiritual problem in our country. And when I say that, what I mean is folks across our country, people across the country, do not, many of them do not know God. They do not know Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. And so it leaves them longing for more. And one of the things that a lot of people use to fill the void, the God void, as Abe calls it, a lot of people use the internet and social media. Some people use pornography, drugs, alcohol, etc. And then some just use social media, which you think is kind of an innocent endeavor. But social media can have damaging effects on one's life. This U.S. Surgeon General says that social media can cause folks to be very, very lonely. But what I would encourage you with, and what I want to leave you with, is that we really need to be examining how much time we spend on the internet and on these social media sites, and whether our time on these sites is manipulating and controlling our emotions. Because we need to be interacting more with family. We need to be interacting more with friends, church members, co-workers. And so we don't need to go and rush to Facebook and the internet to get some kind of sense of purpose, because in reality, that's not where you're going to find purpose. And so I would encourage each of us to study God's Word, draw near to God each day. That's where we find our main purpose in God's Word. And then beyond that, I would encourage you to stay close and connected and have face-to-face conversations with family, friends, and co-workers and anyone else you may be associated with, because that's where we're going to find true happiness, true fulfillment in life. But moving on to another subject, I want to talk about, I'm going to save that subject till after the break. After the break, we're going to talk about illegal immigration, some of these awful examples of illegal immigrants committing crimes beyond crossing the border, crimes in our country, harming U.S. citizens, and then our elected officials do nothing about it. As a matter of fact, they try to protect the criminals in our country. We're going to talk about that after the break. A lot of news to talk about on this Friday. Stay tuned. You're listening to the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Shining light into the darkness, this is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to this Friday edition of the Hamilton Corner. My name is Walker Wildmon. We're here at the American Family Radio Studios here in North Mississippi. You can hear the Hamilton Corner on not only on Urban Family Talk Network, but also you can hear it on American Family Radio Network. A lot of ways to keep up with the show. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and you can visit our website, afr.net. Abe Hamilton will be back in the saddle next week. But until then, I'm here, for better or worse. A lot of stuff to talk about. I want to move on to illegal immigration. And this subject has been circulating the news for months or years, really now, almost decades. The topic of illegal immigration and what are we going to do about it? And I know the politicians in Washington don't seem to be doing anything about it, but we're still going to talk about it because it's something that needs to be discussed and dealt with at the end of the day. Well, this story I want to bring to you is out of Philadelphia. Out of Philadelphia, you know, you've been hearing this topic of sanctuary cities and these cities who defy federal law and they don't cooperate with federal law enforcement officials. You've been hearing these stories, and it's really unbelievable. The fact that our elected officials, many of them Democrats, do not want to cooperate with immigration and customs enforcement and other federal law enforcement agencies who are trying to deport and protect our country from illegal immigrants, many of them violent offenders. But this topic, this news story is out of Philadelphia, and I'm going to play a clip associated with it. This is clip 2, but this is in Philadelphia, and the mayor there, this hard left mayor that's lawless, and might I say he's a Democrat, he is going to bat for the illegal immigrants. But he's not just going to bat for, you know, a mom and daughter who crossed the border. He's going to bat for rapists, thugs, and all kind of other criminals. And he's trying to protect them from federal law enforcement officers arresting them in his city of Philadelphia. And so the mayor goes to court pleading to the judge to let him harbor and protect criminal thugs from other countries that are in Philadelphia. And I'm going to play this Fox report. This is clip 2. Let's listen.
The Department of Justice slamming the city of Philadelphia for giving a free pass to a previously deported illegal immigrant accused of a heinous crime on a child. City officials ignoring an ICE detainer on Juan Ramon Vasquez, who is now serving up to 20 years in prison for the rape of that child. And the man who let him go, the same mayor that you see here, the mayor that danced when his city was successfully declared a sanctuary.
Well, there you have it. That's a Fox report. And I know he mentions the video of the mayor dancing, and we're on radio, so you can't see that. But you can go watch that. That's we'll get the article posted on the Facebook page. But it's this Philadelphia mayor dancing when he leaves the courtroom. You kind of heard a little bit of talking there in the background. That's when the mayor walks out of the courtroom. He starts doing this happy dance because he just got the rapist protected from the feds. And tell me this is not disgusting. This is absolutely un-American, unpatriotic, immoral, unjust, and disgusting. And so you have the mayor doing this sick happy dance because he got a rapist and other criminals, got him protected from federal law enforcement officials. But specifically, this guy, this sick criminal who he was able to protect in Philadelphia. Here's a little bit about his case. The case involves Juan Ramon Vasquez, who's, I believe, from Honduras. He's an undocumented immigrant, that's an illegal immigrant. Let's don't get caught up and confused by the terminology that the media, the talking snake media, as Abe and Brian Fisher say. Let's don't get caught up in their language. This is an illegal alien, technically, from legal terms, an illegal alien. Not just an undocumented immigrant, as if somehow he forgot to get his birth certificate when he was born. No, he's illegal. There is no documentation for him to get. And so the illegal immigrant whose repeated sexual assault of a family member after his 2014 release from a city jail, that's the first problem, he was released from jail, has become a flashpoint in the sanctuary city debate. Federal prosecutors secured a guilty plea, which means he admitted to it. He admitted to raping a child. And they received a guilty plea in this city near Philadelphia. So that's just one example. And the list of these examples goes on and on and on. Hundreds and thousands of crimes are committed each year in our country by people who shouldn't even be here. By people who shouldn't even be here. So this is not only about law and order, this is about the victimization of the American people. The American people, children, are becoming victims to these thugs who cross our border without permission, and our own elected officials are going to bat in court for them. A very, very disgusting story. Another story, real quick, before we play clip 3. This story is a Mexican citizen who was previously deported, has a long rap sheet of crimes. He was arrested for not the 3rd, not the 5th. He was arrested for the 10th time at our U.S. border. And this is why we need a wall. Are you kidding me? He crossed the border for the 10th time. If someone breaks into your house twice, 3 times, you're going to take extreme measures to protect yourself and your family against the criminal. But our country refuses to build a wall on the southern border and protect our country from illegal immigrants. But I want to play clip 3 here. This is Nancy Pelosi, the great Nancy Pelosi, leader of the Democratic Congress in the House of Representatives, leader of the minority party, the Democrats. And you're not going to believe what she says here. But she essentially says that voting for the Democrats gives illegal immigrants leverage. Yeah, you heard it right. Let's listen to clip 3.
We believe that we will have leverage when we win in November. And why that's important? Because it gives leverage to every family, to every mom who courageously brought her child across the desert to escape death, rape, gang violence, and the rest. Because it gives hope because of the leverage it gives to families who may, a father, dad may have gone home for a family funeral and now can't come back into the country. All of those injustices have to be corrected.
There you have it. That's Nancy Pelosi saying, she said there, this is a quote, that voting for the Democrats give these people leverage. And the people she's talking about? Illegal immigrants. Who's she talking about? The rapist in Philadelphia. That's who she's talking about. Voting for the Democrats will give people like him, or animals like him, leverage. And so, absolutely telling of the Democrats, I don't know how they get a vote. Who votes for these people? I mean, I know a lot of people do, but I just don't understand how an American citizen, someone of decent character, can sign their name off on someone that goes to bat in court for rapist. How is this mayor going to get reelected? Is that going to be on his resume? That I protected a sexual offender from being arrested by federal officials? That's absolutely telling of the Democratic Party. And I think it's time for us to start labeling the Democrats and these lefties for who they are. We need to start calling them, the slogan needs to be, Democrats, the party of thugs, criminals, and sexual offenders. The party of thugs, criminals, and sexual offenders, because that seems to be who they care about. They don't care about the family who lost their job because of Democrat policies. They don't care about the families in Chicago who are being gunned down every weekend. No, they're going to bat for non-citizens. They're going to bat for aliens in our country. Moving on to another subject, many of you know Jim Jordan of Ohio, Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio, and he's been under relentless attack by the media because he's a conservative. He's a born-again believer in Jesus Christ and the Word of God. And so Jim Jordan is a member of the Freedom Caucus in the House of Representatives, and he's running to be the next House Speaker. And he's set to take Paul Ryan's seat. Thank goodness. Representative Paul Ryan, who's been the House Speaker for several years now, is set to retire in January, which is an absolute victory for conservatives, the fact that he's retiring, Paul Ryan that is. But Jim Jordan has been under relentless attack by the media. He's been falsely accused of of ignoring sexual assault when he was a coach at Ohio State, a wrestling coach. And so the media framed him a couple of weeks back. The media framed Jim Jordan to be this former wrestling coach who knew about sexual abuse and completely ignored it. And if you read the headlines, you would think, how can this guy be representing us in Congress? But the fact is, it turns out to all be false. And that's not just my opinion. The same fella who originally kind of laid the blame on Jim Jordan for what happened 30 years ago at Ohio State. Apparently, if you're unfamiliar with the case, one of the team doctors at Ohio State University was doing inappropriate sexual things with the players 30 years ago, back in the 1980s, I believe. And Jim Jordan was an assistant coach, and some folks have been trying to blame Jim Jordan as if he was responsible for it and he knew about it and kept his mouth quiet. But that's not the case. And we're going to listen to clip 4 here. This is a Fox report. This is Trace Gallagher talking about the Ohio State wrestler who originally accused Jim Jordan, totally recanting and doing an about-face. Let's listen.
Coleman is a former wrestler and wrestling coach at Ohio State who coached with and is a longtime friend of Ohio GOP Congressman Jim Jordan. So Coleman's comments about what Congressman Jordan did or didn't know about the Ohio State sex abuse case carry a great deal of weight. And now Mark Coleman says, and I'm quoting here, "At no time did I ever say or have any direct knowledge that Jim Jordan knew of Dr. Richard Strauss's inappropriate behavior. I have nothing but respect for Jim Jordan, as I have known him for more than 30 years and know him to be of impeccable character."
Well, there you have it. That's Trace Gallagher of Fox News giving the report yesterday. So the fellow who originally accused Jim Jordan of knowing about sexual abuse, sexual misconduct, and not doing anything about it, came out yesterday and said the exact opposite. And so you can't believe these reports by the left-wing talking snake media. Reading directly from the news story, this is out of the Daily Caller. The headline is, "Former Ohio State wrestler recants claim that Jim Jordan knew of sexual abuse." And so the media spends hours and days smearing the character of Jim Jordan, only for it to come out that all of their reporting is false. Reading directly from the news story here, the first paragraph reads, "A former Ohio State University wrestler is recanting his claims that Ohio Republican Jim Jordan knew of sexual abuse allegations against a university physician when he coached wrestling at the school over 20 years ago. At no time did I ever," this is a quote from the wrestler himself, the accuser himself, "at no time did I ever say or have any direct knowledge that Jim Jordan knew of Dr. Richard Strauss's inappropriate behavior," Mark Coleman, a former MMA fighter who wrestled at Ohio State, said about Jim Jordan. He goes on to say, "I have nothing but respect for Jim Jordan, and I have known him for more than 30 years and know him to be of impeccable character." And so this is another example, just like you remember the Roy Moore example in Alabama, falsely accused, slandered on multiple occasions, no facts to back it up. You had Herman Cain years ago. He was trying to run for president. Herman Cain running for president, and the left-wing media comes after him. He gets this phony accusation, comes out, accusing him of sexual misconduct years ago, and then he has to resign from his campaign, step down, and cancel his campaign. And so you have these examples over and over again of the left-wing media framing a conservative to be some kind of immoral animal, and then it turns out months later that they're lying. And so that's why we need to be very careful, and I know most of you are, but we need to be very careful about, first off, we need to be very careful about getting our news from the left-wing mainstream media. But second off, if you do get your news from them, you need to be very careful about these accusations against conservatives that end up being false. You need to be very, very hesitant. And you remember the Judge Roy Moore story in Alabama several months back before the special election there. He was accused of all kind of stuff from 20, 30 years ago, and half of the stuff was debunked within days. And one of the accusers came out and said, yeah, I kind of made up half my story. Wait. You made up half your story? Well, we can't believe anything you say. But nonetheless, Roy Moore was defeated in Alabama largely because of these false allegations. So folks, let's be very careful about where we get our information from. You're listening to the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio, Urban Family Talk. You can visit our podcast page, afr.net. We'll be back in the last segment on this Friday edition of the Hamilton Corner. More news, more stories coming your way.
Hamilton Corner podcast and one-minute commentaries are available at afr.net and urbanfamilytalk.com. Back to the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back. My name is Walker Wildmon. This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Good to have you here. I'm sitting in this week, or half of this week, for Abraham Hamilton III. So good to have you back on the show this Friday afternoon. I hope you have a great weekend coming up. When we talked about, loneliness and the study that says a lot of folks become lonely because they spend too much time on social media. Well, this weekend's a great chance to spend time outside, spend time with your family, spend time at church, spend time with your friends, catching up with them. At the end of the day, that's who will be there for you. Social media is not going to be there for you on your toughest days. You need to rely on family, friends, rely on God for your comfort, for your purpose in life. But moving back into the stories of the day, this last segment, we're going to kind of speed through a lot of these stories, just kind of get them all covered in the show today. But one story is out of Missouri, I believe. Yeah, Missouri. And they had some primary elections in recent days in Missouri. And one of the voters going to the ballot box to vote in Missouri this past week, he approached the building where he was going to go in and vote. And one of the election workers told him, hey, you got to take that Make America Great Again hat off. You can't come in here unless you take that Make America Great Again hat off, because that's a political yada, 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 yada. Well, it turns out that's not true. The voter can wear the political hat, the Make America Great Again hat, in the voting booth. Because he's an American citizen. He's not an election worker. He's an average citizen going to vote, going to cast his vote, and he can wear the Missouri Secretary of State's office said he can wear the hat in the voting booth. So that's a neat story there. But you have these lefties, the election worker, trying to say, take it off, take the hat off before you come in here. But he can wear the hat. And if I'm not mistaken, I know this varies per state. There's different state laws on what kind of attire, what kind of political attire that you can wear when you go vote. But if I'm not mistaken, voters, not election officials and not campaign officials, but voters totally unaffiliated from the campaign and the whole election process, the background of the election process, such as counting ballots, etc. If I'm not mistaken, citizens can wear whatever they want when they go vote. They can wear a Trump for president shirt. They can wear a Hillary for president shirt, on and on and on. If I'm not mistaken, these states are not supposed to prohibit what a private citizen wears at the ballot box. I may be wrong there, but I know I'm right when it comes to Missouri and their laws, because this fellow who was wearing a Make America Great Again hat was told by the Secretary of State, you can wear that hat in the voting booth. So, neat story there. But hey, the election worker tried his best to limit the attire, the Make America Great Again attire, and he largely failed in that endeavor. Another neat story is, well, I'll save this story to kind of tie into another story I'm going to mention in a minute, but this is not a neat story. This is a serious story, and that is, you remember months ago, back in February, I think, we had that Parkland, Florida shooting. The Parkland, Florida massacre. 17 students dead in Parkland, Florida, shot by Nicholas Cruz, a fellow student, who is in jail now, on trial, waiting to go on trial. And so, but there's been a lot of investigations going on in regards to this shooting in Florida, and what could have been done, if anything, to have stopped it, or to have prevented more casualties than occurred. And reading directly from the headline here, this is out of Fox News, and that is the Florida sheriff leading a state commission on the Parkland High School massacre says there were multiple opportunities to stop Nicholas Cruz, the shooter, the gunman, during the attack, if only someone had confronted him with a gun. Sheriff Bob Gualtieri of Pinellas County, citing surveillance footage taken from inside Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, which is where the shooting took place, told the New York Times reporter Thursday that Cruz, the shooter, had to stop firing his AR-15 rifle several times in order to reload. And this is another quote. From the sheriff, if he had somebody in there with a gun, they could have mitigated this. There were opportunities for staff to have intervened if they had been armed. And so another example, another conclusion that shows, a factual conclusion that shows, despite the anti-Second Amendment rhetoric that you hear about, we need to get guns out of schools, we need to get guns out of our cities, we need to get guns out of our neighborhoods, guns are the problem. This sheriff says only if someone, a responsible citizen, would have had a gun here, this damage could have been lessened, or who knows, completely prevented. And so, once again, the leftist narrative that guns are the problem is totally debunked here. Guns aren't the problem. Sinful human beings are the problem. Men who ignore the laws and kill and murder innocent life, that's the problem. We have a sin problem. We have a spiritual problem in our country, and taking away our Second Amendment rights is not going to fix it. I mean, look at Chicago. Chicago has the strictest gun laws in the country, and they have the highest murder rate to a certain extent. Last weekend, 11 people killed, 63 shot, I believe. Some say more than that were shot last weekend. And the lefties will say, here's their argument. You'll run into it. They'll say, well, you know, Chicago has these great gun laws, you know, these strict gun laws. They're doing the right thing. But these criminals, what they do is they travel outside of the city to go buy their guns. They travel to the county and other neighboring cities to buy their guns, and then they come back into Chicago and kill people. Well, that proves that gun control doesn't work, because you can't ban the millions, if not billions, of guns in the world. I think there's over 260 million firearms in our country, in the U.S. alone, if not more than that. That was a study from years ago. And so we got all these guns, and you're not going to take them all up, my friend. we got something called the Second Amendment. And so gun control doesn't work. The criminals, the killers, and the gangs will always have guns. And it's up to the American citizens, the responsible citizens, to protect our country from murderers. And the way we do that is the Second Amendment. Plain and simple. One encouraging story that I want to talk about, and I kind of hinted at this earlier a few minutes ago, is an Air Force sergeant by the name of John Chapman, who died fighting for our country. Well, he's going to be posthumously honored, if I'm saying that right, posthumously honored, meaning he's passed away serving our country, but they're still going to honor his name and his service at the White House. He's going to be given a Medal of Honor at the White House in the coming days or weeks. But this is Air Force Sergeant John Chapman, and I want you to listen to this report. This report kind of details what he did, what the heroic actions he took to help save fellow service members. Let's listen.
The Air Force releasing the video of the heroic moments that earned an airman the Medal of Honor. The clip showing Tech Sergeant John Chapman fighting al-Qaeda militants in Afghanistan in 2002.
This really is something. Chapman charges right into enemy bunkers before he is knocked unconscious. And more than an hour later, he is still fighting until tragically he is shot and killed.
President Trump will present Chapman's family with the Medal of Honor on August 22nd. Rutz Slabinski, the Navy SEAL who fought alongside him, was given the medal in May.
Well, there you have it. John Chapman, Sergeant John Chapman, will be posthumously honored August 22nd, I believe the reporter said, because here's what he did. The helicopter dropped off the forces, the military forces, the U.S. military forces, to go and rescue one of the injured service members. And Sergeant John Chapman ran directly towards the gunfire. The radical jihadis, the Islamist supremacists in Iraq and Afghanistan, he ran directly towards the fire, and he was wounded. At first, he was wounded, knocked unconscious. Then he ended up waking back up in this foxhole, and he fights on after being shot and wounded. He fights on for another hour and ends up killing 2 terrorists. And the other service members, the Navy SEALs, made it out alive, many of them. But Sergeant John Chapman will be honored, and that's just an encouraging story. And the reason I brought that story up, the story has so much merit and deserves to be mentioned even without a follow-up. But a follow-up, and I'm gonna tie this all in. This is a story out of, let's see, Tennessee. A story out of Tennessee. This is another story out of Fox. And this is the headline is, Boy in Wheelchair Pulls Himself to His Feet for the National Anthem at a Tennessee Fair. Reading directly from the news story, a 10-year-old boy who often uses a wheelchair and requires braces on his legs managed to stand for the national anthem at a Tennessee fair on Sunday night. Avery Price has hereditary spastic paraplegia syndrome, a condition similar to cerebral palsy, which makes it difficult for him to use his legs. Fox 17 reports. Despite the disability, however, Avery said he wanted to show his patriotism at the Putnam County Fair in Cookeville, Tennessee. And you know why Avery Price, despite being disabled, you know why he stands for the national anthem? Because men like Sergeant John Chapman go overseas on foreign soil and they fight to their death for the American people, for the American way of life, for our nation, for our freedom. And you know what represents that freedom? The national anthem and our American flag. That's what represents our freedom, and that's what represents people like Sgt John Chapman who die overseas fighting for our country. And that's why I stand and honor our country, not because I agree with everything going on in our country, but because I'm honoring by standing for the national anthem, by saluting our flag, putting my hand over my heart. I am honoring men like Sgt John Chapman who lay down their life for the American way of life and for our Constitution, and so that we can live freely. One last story I want to mention is an op-ed by Michael Goodwin, and the headline is why it's time for Trump to play his ace in the hole. And what Michael Goodwin, a conservative commentator and writer, what he's talking about here is, in regards to the whole Russia investigation, he's saying that it's time for President Trump to declassify a lot of these documents related to the Russia investigation. Because this is kind of a last stand for President Trump if he were to do this. Because many of these documents that the Department of Justice has been keeping from Congress and their oversight, I believe, and others who are well versed on this topic believe that there is information in these classified documents which will absolutely end the phony Russia investigation, as I like to call it, the fishing expedition like we talked about yesterday. Michael Goodwin, or Godwin, says that President Trump must declassify these documents, all of them, so that the American people can see how twisted, corrupt, and unjust this whole Russia investigation is. And I wholeheartedly agree that it's time for President Trump to not only unclassify a lot of these documents, I would argue that it's time for President Trump to put an end to this whole Russia investigation. This thing's been dragging on for far too long. There's been no associated crime found, despite the fact that over 1 million documents have been turned over to Robert Mueller and his group of 17 Democratic attorneys and prosecutors. No crime's been found as it relates to the purpose of the special counsel. But the fishing expedition goes on. They must have plenty of fishing line. They must have plenty of fuel. Must have plenty of rods and bait. The fishing expedition led by Robert Mueller continues. President Trump must bring it to an end. One way to bring it to an end is to declassify all of the documents related to it. Thank you for tuning in to the Hamilton Corner. It's been great to host for Abe Hamilton the last few days. Stay tuned to American Family Radio this weekend. Abe will be back next week. God bless. Spend time with family and friends. Most of all, spend time in church this weekend on Sunday. God bless.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.